On the night of May 28, 1453, thousands of fires burned outside Constantinople. Beyond the walls stood an Ottoman army many times larger than the city's defending force. Cannon crews prepared their weapons. Soldiers carried ladders toward the trenches. And inside the city, the last defenders of the Roman Empire waited for the final attack. For more than 1,000 years, Constantinople had survived invasions, civil wars, and some of history's greatest sieges. Its walls had stopped armies from east and west, but now there was almost no empire left behind them. No powerful Byzantine fleet was coming. No distant province could send reinforcements. Only the capital remained. And before the next morning ended, the Roman Empire would either survive one final assault or disappear forever. 2 years earlier, Mehmed II had become Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. He was only 19. Many foreign rulers underestimated him. They believed he lacked experience. They were wrong. Mehmed inherited an empire divided by one city. The Ottomans controlled territory in Europe and Asia, but Constantinople stood between them. The city commanded the Bosporus, the narrow waterway connecting the Black Sea with the Mediterranean. It was a center of trade, a sacred capital of Orthodox Christianity, and the last surviving symbol of the Roman imperial world. To Mehmed, Constantinople was more than a military target. It was the city he needed to transform the Ottoman state into a true empire. His preparations began long before the first cannon fired. In 1452, he constructed Rumeli Hisari on the European shore of the Bosporus. Together with an Ottoman fortress across the water, it allowed him to control ships approaching Constantinople from the Black Sea. The city was being isolated. Mehmed secured agreements with neighboring powers. He gathered soldiers, engineers, miners, sailors, and artillery specialists. He strengthened roads and collected enormous quantities of supplies. Among his weapons were massive bronze bombards, capable of firing stone projectiles against the ancient walls. They were slow, difficult to transport, and dangerous to operate. But Constantinople had never faced artillery of this scale. Inside the city, Emperor Constantine XI understood the threat. He asked Western rulers for help. Some volunteers arrived, but Europe remained divided by politics, religion, and commercial rivalry. The emperor may have had only around 7,000 defenders. They included Byzantines, Venetians, Genoese, and other foreign volunteers. Among them was Giovanni Giustiniani Longo, an experienced Genoese commander who took responsibility for the most vulnerable section of the land walls. Against them stood an Ottoman army many times larger. The exact number remains disputed, but the imbalance was undeniable. Mehmed could replace his losses. Constantine could replace almost no one. The defenders still possessed one extraordinary advantage: the Theodosian Walls. An attacking force had to cross a moat, overcome an outer wall, and then face a much larger inner wall protected by towers. Water guarded the remaining sides of the city. The Sea of Marmara lay to the south, the Bosporus to the east, and the Golden Horn protected the north. Across the entrance to that harbor, the defenders stretched a massive chain to block enemy ships. Constantinople was surrounded, but it was not defenseless. On April 6, 1453, the siege began. Ottoman cannon opened fire against the western walls. The sound shook the city. Stone projectiles struck towers that had stood for centuries. Dust filled the air. Cracks spread through ancient masonry. Yet the walls did not collapse. During the day, the bombardment opened breaches. At night, soldiers and civilians filled them with earth, timber, stones, and debris. By sunrise, a section that appeared destroyed could be defended again. The cannon could break stone, but it still had to break the people rebuilding it. Mehmed launched attacks against the damaged defenses. Giustiniani moved his men wherever the pressure became greatest. Again and again, the Ottomans were pushed back. At sea, Mehmed faced another obstacle. His fleet could not pass the chain protecting the Golden Horn. As long as the harbor remained secure, the defenders could concentrate most of their limited forces on the land walls. Then, on April 20th, several Christian supply ships appeared in the Sea of Marmara. The Ottoman fleet moved to intercept them. From the walls, thousands watched as the vessels fought their way toward the harbor. The struggle lasted for hours. Then the wind changed. The Christian ships reached the chain, entered the Golden Horn, and delivered desperately needed supplies. Inside Constantinople, hope returned. The Ottoman fleet had been humiliated, but the victory forced Mehmed to attempt something extraordinary. If his ships could not enter through the water, they would enter across the land. A pathway was prepared behind the hills near Galata. Timber was laid across the route. The surface was lubricated. Then, during the night, Ottoman vessels were pulled from the Bosporus and dragged across the earth. The next morning, the defenders looked toward the Golden Horn and saw Ottoman sails inside the protected harbor. The chain had not been broken. It had been made irrelevant. And from that moment, Constantinople was no longer protected on only one front. The Ottoman ships inside the Golden Horn did not immediately conquer Constantinople, but they changed the siege. The defenders now had to protect additional walls. Men were transferred away from the main battlefield. Every new position weakened another. And with only a few thousand soldiers, Constantinople could not defend everything forever. The Byzantines attempted a night attack against the Ottoman fleet. It failed. Mehmed intensified the pressure. His cannon continued striking the land walls. Engineers dug tunnels beneath the fortifications. The defenders responded with countermines, fighting another hidden war beneath the ground. Ottoman attacks were repelled. Tunnels were destroyed. Breaches were repaired. Week after week, the city refused to fall. But survival came at a terrible cost. The defenders fought during the day and rebuilt the walls at night. Food became harder to distribute. The wounded could not be replaced. Every death left another section exposed. The Ottoman army was also under pressure. A force that large consumed enormous quantities of food. Casualties were growing. Rumors warned that foreign ships might arrive. Mehmed understood that the siege could not continue forever. He needed a final decision. Inside Constantinople, the greatest danger was no longer the cannon. It was isolation. No large Christian army was approaching. No Byzantine fleet would break the blockade. The walls remained powerful, but the empire that had once supported them was gone. Mehmed offered Constantine XI a final opportunity to surrender. The emperor refused to hand over the city. The exact words later attributed to him cannot be confirmed, but his decision was clear. Constantinople would not be surrendered voluntarily. On May 28th, the Ottoman camp prepared for the final assault. Weapons were distributed, ladders were carried forward, soldiers received their orders. Thousands of lights appeared beyond the walls. Inside the city, Catholics and Orthodox Christians gathered in Hagia Sophia. For generations, they had been divided by religious conflict. Now, they prayed beneath the same dome. The soldiers returned to their positions. Constantine XI walked among the defenders. He knew there was no second capital waiting behind them, no reserve army, no safe retreat. This was the final defense of the Roman state. Shortly after midnight on May 29th, the Ottoman attack began. Drums and trumpets echoed through the darkness. The first troops advanced toward the damaged walls. Their purpose was to exhaust the defenders and reveal weaknesses. The Byzantines held their positions. The first attackers were pushed back. Then, stronger Ottoman units entered the battle. They attacked breaches created by weeks of artillery fire. Justinian and his men defended the central sector. Again, the Ottomans were stopped. Hours passed. Constantinople was still standing, but the defenders were exhausted. Their ammunition was limited, their barricades were breaking, and every wounded soldier created an opening that could not be filled. Then Mehmed sent forward his most disciplined forces. The Janissaries advanced. They attacked men who had already survived several waves. Smoke covered the battlefield. Commands disappeared beneath the sound of cannon, drums, and collapsing stone. At the height of the fighting, Giovanni Giustiniani was seriously wounded. He could no longer command the defense. His men carried him away from the walls. His departure devastated the morale of those defending the most important sector. For weeks, Giustiniani had held the defense together. Now, at the moment of greatest danger, he was gone. Ottoman soldiers gained positions on the damaged fortifications. Their banners appeared above the walls. Some defenders believed the city had already been lost. Others began retreating toward the inner streets. One later account claimed that a small gate had been left open, but the story remains uncertain. Constantinople did not fall because of one forgotten entrance. It fell because its exhausted defenders were being overwhelmed across a collapsing defensive system. Once Ottoman troops secured positions inside the walls, panic spread. A force of only a few thousand men could no longer close every breach. The Ottoman army poured into the city. Constantine XI disappeared during the final fighting. Later traditions described him removing his imperial insignia and entering the battle. His exact final moments remain unknown. His body was never conclusively identified. The last Roman emperor vanished as the empire around him came to an end. On the morning of May 29, 1453, after 53 days of siege, Constantinople fell. Ottoman soldiers entered streets that had witnessed imperial coronations, religious councils, and more than 1,000 years of Byzantine history. Later that day, Mehmed entered the conquered capital. He was only 21 years old. The ruler many had underestimated had achieved what generations of commanders could not. He had taken the city of the Caesars, but Mehmed did not intend to leave Constantinople as an empty ruin. He wanted it to become the capital of his empire. The city would be rebuilt, repopulated, and transformed into the center of Ottoman power. The conquest ended one imperial world and began another. Artillery had played a crucial role. The cannon damaged the walls and placed constant pressure on the defenders, but no single weapon conquered Constantinople. Mehmed succeeded because he combined every advantage available to him. Artillery weakened the fortifications. Infantry exhausted the defenders. The fleet tightened the blockade. Ships transported across land created a second front. Engineers attacked from beneath the ground, and Ottoman logistics sustained the siege for nearly 2 months. Constantinople did not fall because its defenders lacked courage. It fell because courage could no longer compensate for isolation. The city had powerful walls, but almost no empire behind them. It had experienced commanders, but almost no reserves. It had waited for foreign help, but help never arrived in sufficient strength. For 53 days, a few thousand defenders resisted an empire. They rebuilt what the cannon destroyed. They fought from the walls, across the water, and beneath the earth. But on the final morning, the walls were no longer protecting a great civilization. They were protecting its last remaining city. The cannon broke the stone. Exhaustion broke the defense. Isolation removed every hope of rescue. And overwhelming force finished what centuries of enemies had failed to do. On May 29, 1453, Constantinople did not merely fall. The final chapter of the Roman Empire came to an end, and from behind its broken walls, a new imperial age began.